The Razer Blade 16 and the Asus Zephyrus G16 are both about the most premium Windows laptops that money can buy. They're very similar, so obviously people want to know which one of them is better. And this year they both got quite some upgrades, so which one should you get? Well, let's find out. And please like and subscribe if you like these type of videos. From the outside, the difference is black and white. Get it? They both do try to look very professional and sleek, but they each have their own gamery twist to it. The Blade has that classic green LED logo on the back, while the Zephyrus has an LED strip, which you can customize the movements of. The Blade is very allergic to fingerprints though, while the Zephyrus has a more matte feeling to it, which rejects dirt quite well, including on its darker color. They both feel incredibly sturdy and have near MacBook-like build quality with a fully aluminum body from top to bottom. The Blade used to feel superior, but this year's Zephyrus got a pretty big upgrade in sturdiness, so now they feel about the same in terms of build quality. The Blade does have thicker metal though, so the sides do feel a bit more tanky. But that thicker metal does make it slightly heavier, not by a whole lot, but I do feel the difference. The Blade is technically a little thinner, but they're essentially just as thin, and about as thin as it gets for a gaming laptop. But in those thin bodies are some ridiculous specs. I got them in identical configs, with the same CPU and GPU, so comparing them is about as easy as possible. The Blade technically has a 5 watt higher TGP for that 5080, but we'll see which one actually reaches a higher wattage during gaming. But other than that, these two are very similar. The Blade has a better port selection than the Zephyrus. It actually has a new Thunderbolt 5 port and an extra USB-A port, which could be very handy. I do think the Zephyrus has a better HDMI port placement though. I wouldn't want that where my mouse is. The Blade has a slightly higher wattage power brick, which does make it a little larger and heavier, but it's not very noticeable. But they both support smaller bricks as well, since they can charge through USB-C up to 100 watts. Now let's take a look at their keyboards. The Blade has far superior RGB lighting in every way. While the Zephyrus's backlight is fine, it's only a single zone RGB. While the Blade has the best backlighting on any laptop, with a fully per key RGB backlight. And these LEDs get bright, which allows for some very complex and pretty light shows that look good even during daytime. Also, when you press the FN or Shift key, it highlights which combinations you can use, which is really neat. As for the keys themselves, they both have great keyboards in their own ways. The Zephyrus feels slightly more thumpy and has a tiny bit more key travel, but the Blade is more clicky and requires slightly less force to press down. Keyboards are very subjective, but both of these are great to type on. The Zephyrus has a separate power button here, while the Blade has it included in the keyboard. And they both have reprogrammable macro keys, although the Blade technically has one more. Moving down, we have their trackpads. And they are both absolutely massive, which you love to see. They're both made of glass, so they feel just as sturdy, and their clicks are just as nice too. The Zephyrus requires a tiny bit less force to press down, and they sound a little different. Again, this is completely subjective. I prefer the Zephyrus slightly because you can click it down further, but some people might prefer the Blade. Moving up, we have their displays. And just going off of their specs, these are two identical Samsung panels, at least on paper. They're both OLED, so they have equally gorgeous colors with high contrast and deep blacks. They're both 240 Hz, which is more than smooth enough even for the most competitive of games. And they get just as bright, which is even brighter than last year at a whopping 1100 nits. But here comes the big difference, their coating. While the Zephyrus has basically the best anti-reflective coating in the industry right now, the Blade has nothing, which means you're essentially looking at a mirror most of the time. And the difference between these two is very noticeable. While the Zephyrus can easily be used outside as well, the Blade has issues with visibility even inside. This is a real bummer, because the panel itself is awesome, but that doesn't do much if you're constantly looking at reflections. They both open up about as far, which is pretty nice, but the Blade's hinge feels a bit sturdier and tighter, which does mean it wobbles less, although neither one of them wobbles much at all. But that tighter hinge also means it slides around more on tables, if you try to open it with one hand. Speaking of opening it, you really need to jam your nails into the Blade's lip to open it up. While the Zephyrus has a bigger lip over its entire body, so it's a lot easier to grab and open it. Moving on, let's talk about audio. These two thin lights have come very far with their speakers, and over the years they made quite some upgrades. So which one sounds better? The Zephyrus is still way further ahead. While the Blade has definitely improved over the years, the Zephyrus has infinitely better and deeper bass. I mean, you can physically feel it with music like this. It has actually good surround sound, while the Blade just sounds worse if you enable that feature. And overall, it just sounds better. Look, the Blade does have pretty good speakers, but compared to the Zephyrus, it doesn't even come close. So for gaming, music, or anything else, get the Zephyrus. The camera on the Blade has some weird brightness issues sometimes, but when it doesn't, it does look a little better than the Zephyrus. But then the Zephyrus has a way better sounding microphone. But what we all want to see is which one of them is faster. They do have the exact same specs, only with some slight wattage differences. So how do they compare? Well, in Cinebench R23, they're exactly the same. I mean, these are the same CPUs with very similar power limits, so obviously they perform the same as any other 386H laptop. But in 3D Mark TimeSpy, we do see a difference. While it's not huge, the Blade 16 does score a bit higher than the Zephyrus, likely because of those slightly higher power limits. But the Blade has an issue that the Zephyrus does not have. When you unplug them from their chargers, the Zephyrus does get a little slower, but this is pretty normal for gaming laptops. But the Blade 16 gets a whole lot slower on battery, and it performs almost like a 10-year-old laptop. And unfortunately, you can feel that in day-to-day use. When it's on battery, the Blade feels downright slow at times. But these two are gaming laptops, so let's see how they compare in some actual games. And they performed basically the same. There were some outliers here and there. The Blade was faster in Cyberpunk and Red Dead, while the Zephyrus was a little faster in Counter-Strike 2 and Oblivion. But overall, they're getting about the same frame rates in games. And those are high frame rates. These are both great at gaming, even at their high native resolutions. But the Blade is supposed to have 5 watts more for that GPU, so is that actually the case? Well, while playing Cyberpunk, the Blade's 5080 hovers around 135 to 140 watts, which is its advertised wattage. But the Zephyrus actually runs a little higher, staying around 140 to 145 watts. This difference is nothing. 5 watts of dynamic boost doesn't really impact gaming performance, and they both handle their power limits a little bit differently. So for one game the Blade might be faster, while in another the Zephyrus, but only by a little bit. What is noticeable is that way lower performance on battery for the Blade. I mean, this is a known issue on older Razer laptops as well. So while these two are both great while plugged in, if you want to do stuff on the go like video editing, it might be better to go for the Zephyrus. Now, these are both thin laptops with lots of power. And lots of power means lots of heat. So which one of them is cooled better? Well, at their highest power limits, they both pretty much reach their thermal limits. The Zephyrus does consistently stay 5 degrees cooler than the Blade on its CPU though. But on both laptops, we can actually limit their CPUs slightly to make them run a whole lot cooler. And this way, you can make them both run at reasonable temperatures, while only losing about 5% performance. So I wouldn't worry about overheating or anything on either one of these. However, the Zephyrus does have way more customization for its cooling though, with custom power limits, fan curves, and a bunch more. Meanwhile, the Blade gets a switch to make the CPU slower. That's about it. So if you're a bit more tech savvy and like to customize your performance, the Zephyrus does offer a bit more options. But what about their fan noise? Well, the Zephyrus does get louder. Overall, I think they have about an equal cooling system, but they both stay completely silent while doing lighter stuff. Now, these two laptops have the same display, the same size battery, and the same processor, so they should be getting the same battery life, right? Well, I tested their batteries in 2 different scenarios, under light use and during gaming. In the light use test, I played a YouTube video until their batteries died, with their displays at 80% brightness, at 60 Hz, and with their keyboard backlights turned off. And something ain't right here. The Zephyrus lasted a whole lot longer. Like I said, they have very similar components, so they should be getting the same amount of battery life. Well, I'm pretty sure that the Blade has above average power draw on battery, because other laptops with the same processor and very similar displays also lasted quite a bit longer. This was an issue on previous model Blades as well, so I'm not too sure. In the gaming test, I played Minecraft until their batteries died with the same settings as before. And again, the Zephyrus lasted considerably longer, even in a lighter game like Minecraft. So again, if you want to do light or heavier stuff on the go, the Zephyrus might be your better choice. But what about upgradeability? Because they are both thin and light, so do they still have space for modular components? Well, they're both a bit lacking. While both of these laptops actually used to have upgradable memory back in the day, it is all soldered now, which kinda sucks. They both do have 2 M.2 SSD slots, which is nice for extra storage, and both still have Wi-Fi cards, although Wi-Fi 7 should definitely be enough for now. But now we get to the part that most of you will care about, pricing. The 5070 Ti models of both the Zephyrus G16 and Blade 16 are actually almost the exact same price, which is pretty nice for a comparison. But then for the 5080 model, the Blade is actually considerably cheaper. A $400 difference isn't nothing for a laptop. In Europe, the situation is about the same, but on the lower spec models as well, the Zephyrus is a bit more expensive in all configurations, weirdly enough. Yes, Razer has officially become the cheaper option. That's when you know the market is cooked. I'll put links for all these models in the description down below for if you want to buy them. Alright, let's get to a conclusion here. Which one of these should you get? The Zephyrus G16 or the Blade 16? Well, I'm definitely gonna have to go with the Zephyrus. Look, these are both amazing laptops. The fact that this amount of power can be stuffed into these tiny, sturdy bodies is just mind-boggling. They're both gonna be able to handle every single game, application, or anything you throw at them with ease. And they're also both gonna survive a whole lot of abuse. But this year around, the Zephyrus G16 is just a better version of the Blade 16. It has longer battery life, it has better software, it has better speakers, and it has a way better display coating, so you can actually see what you're doing in a normal lighted room. And since the 5070 Ti configs for both of these cost about the same, there's no real reason to go for the Blade 16. Other than that very pretty keyboard. I mean, I do wish the Zephyrus had that as well. But if you want my real advice, get last year's Zephyrus. It is almost as good as this year's model, but at like half the price for a slightly lower spec. But if you do want the newest device, the Zephyrus still reigns supreme. I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.
Nice knife, Soviet.
$3.
Okay,
That's
Can I
nice,
pay for it?
Soviet. I know.